Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I wanted to discuss as video 2 of the Inner Child series. I really felt like it was time to really discuss empowerment with you. As most of you are well aware, I really explore themes of empowerment with my guides as well as my inner child. And the past week, I've been given the opportunity to dive deeper into that topic, but specifically really dealing with the execution of our personal power, or how we exercise it, to be more specific. So I find that I think a lot of us struggle with empowerment. I think that this is a really common thing. And as I've mentioned before, my approach to inner child work, it's purely intuitive. It's really driven by my guides and by by the energy that I feel surrounding certain topics. And I find lately that I'm very drawn to the archetype of the Femme Fatale. And I've been drawn to the archetype throughout the vast majority of my adulthood. It started in my 20s, and then it sort of it would fade in and out as I grew older. And I'm finding myself drawn to the archetype of the Femme Fatale again, and working with the energy of this archetype as well as the myth of the archetype. And a lot of the spiritual work that I do, I really like to sit with how things manifest energetically, but also how I experience it and what I think, honestly. For me, the Femme Fatale, she exists within all of us. And she's so much more than, that perfect shade of red lipstick. She's so much more than that pair of stiletto heels or that cat eye. She's more than an aesthetic. She is that empowered woman within all of us. She sets boundaries and she maintains them, and she doesn't feel guilty about it. I just see her as just that strong, confident, independent woman that I think we all have inside of us. And although I think that, that red lipstick or that perfect pair of lingerie that makes you feel sexy, or that tight red or black dress that you love wearing because you feel so amazing in it, I think those things are excellent for really embodying that archetype and really bringing out that experience and connecting with that energy. I'm just saying that I think that it's a universal thing. Like, she exists within all of us. And I find that really connecting with that archetype is very helpful when you're dealing with power struggles, or dealing with feelings of self-doubt, and just lacking confidence, as I'm sure so many of us do, especially if we have childhood trauma surrounding just being feminine, or, having that experience of being feminine. So I know a lot of religious trauma can bring up these feelings as well. So I find it very beneficial to really connecting with these archetypes. If you are interested in connecting with archetypes, if you're interested in doing that kind of work, or even working with myths, I find that's a beautiful archetype to start with. I find that the witch archetype can work as well. I find that there is some similarities and parallels between the femme fatale and the witch archetype. I also find the myth and the archetype of Persephone to be very similar to how I experience the energy of the femme fatale. It's how I experience Persephone. She is very much that Scorpio, Pluto energy that is associated with the sign of Scorpio. She is just that, you know, smoldering femme fatale, like that polarizing, magnetizing, intense kind of energy. She has that to her, at least that's how I experience her. Another really helpful archetype is the crone archetype, and I think it's beneficial for some of us to sort of explore the differences between like the grandmother archetype as well as the crone archetype. I like to call it the grandmother archetype, but I think that it is beneficial to really discuss how so many of us don't have this experience. Like collectively, a lot of us see the older generation as like, we hear about stories, or maybe in the media, older women are sometimes portrayed as like this sweet little woman who bakes cookies. That wasn't my personal experience with my grandmother, and it wasn't a lot of people that I know that I grew up with. It wasn't their experience either. So I find it very beneficial to explore that. I forgot to mention that this is a very ongoing thing. I feel like I'm gonna have to unpack. I'm gonna have to unpack the themes of empowerment probably throughout the rest of my life. Just like my anxiety, this is something that I feel like this is very ongoing. So there will probably be updated videos as we go along, as we continue throughout the series. So another thing that I found very helpful is, you know, continuing with that crone and grandmother archetype, is to really explore your family history and your personal patterns and cycles that you've inherited through your family members, throughout your childhood as well as like in your current life. So I realized that there's a lot of duality within mine. Throughout my childhood, my grandmother and my mother were very different in how they expressed their empowerment. My grandmother ruled her household like a drill sergeant. There was a lot of structure. She was very strict and she was very much in control of the household. Whereas my grandfather, her husband, did a lot of the external. He dealt with a lot of the external matters. He worked outside of the home. He would do the grocery shopping. Because he drove. My grandmother never really drove. I've never seen her operate a vehicle. So I found that that was sort of like what worked for them. That was their dynamic. My mother was the complete opposite. My mother had very little to no control of household matters. My father just sort of did whatever he wanted. My mother, however, was extremely empowered in the sense that she would work multiple jobs. She would do whatever it took to keep us afloat. And that is very empowering for a woman. Especially, you know, a woman like my mother. So she also would put all my toys together as a child. She would do the vast majority of fixing things as well. Like she fixed my bike several times as a child. So I found that to be extremely empowering as well, or one of the most empowering aspects about her. So I just find it very helpful to kind of look at the women in your life and sort of see these patterns about them, and like how I was able to sort of see the duality in that. I see a lot of similarities between myself and my grandmother, and it's something that I like to keep a journal, like a record of, and it's very beneficial for cycle breaking. If you have certain patterns of abuse, addiction, just as a couple of examples, that you grew up with that were very present within your environment, it's something very beneficial to, understand these patterns, to see them. Of course, you can always do research. Understanding these things are so essential to really being able to see the patterns. So, as well as just being honest with yourself and being realistic about your expectations, about the patterns and the cycles. It's very important that you're absolutely honest. And I think that's one of the beauties of having a journal. It's just for you. You can keep it hidden away if you're afraid somebody's going to read it. It's honestly just for you. You can write anything that comes into your head. Especially if you're doing this type of work, it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. And I think it's just absolutely crucial for you to be absolutely honest about these things, about especially like the toxic or negative patterns that you've inherited, or that you've seen growing up. It helps to identify them. So that is the vast majority of the material that I really wanted to share. I think now it's an excellent place to really start going over some of the decks that I thought would be perfect for really embodying that femme fatale energy. Of course, how you approach this energy is up to you. I dressed up today for it. I just felt like, I feel like exploring makeup is an excellent way to really embody the femme fatale experience. And to me today, it felt like wearing purple and blue eyeshadow. Sometimes it's a cat eye, sometimes it's a fire engine red lipstick typically. So this experience can vary depending on who you are. Or it's wearing a very specific outfit. I have certain pieces in my closet that I really like to wear to really embody the femme fatale. So that's one way that you can deal with this type of energy. Another way is to use tarot and oracle for divination. This is from the Botanical Oracle. This is my favorite oracle deck of all time. I've spoken quite a lot about it on my channel at this point, so I'm sure none of you are surprised at this point. So this is the Vixen card from the deck. So to me, this card, it's usually always talking about a femme fatale. So I like to pull the card, and it's really to bring in that energy, that I want to bring it into my experience and embody the energy. So I love working with this deck for many of the archetypes that I mentioned today, and the Femme Fatale archetype is no different. Although I find that its energy aligns itself beautifully with the witch archetype, I think it's better than the Femme Fatale archetype, but I still enjoy working with this deck for the Femme Fatale experience as well. Next, new in my collection is the Witch Sister Oracle. If you have me on Instagram, you've probably seen the pictures at this point. just trying to get it. There we go. So this deck is a beautifully illustrated deck. The imagery really packs a punch. I find the deck very raw. It's very beautiful. It's very passionate. It's wild. I'm not sure if you know, if you're new to my channel, you probably don't know, but I'm Scottish. I'm half Scottish on my mother's side. So I feel a deep connection to my ancestors through this deck. It is based on Celtic mythology. So I find this deck is very powerful for connecting to not only the witch archetype, but the Femme Fatale archetype. And of course, the Femme Fatale archetype can be seen in the witch archetype as well. Like I said, she exists within every woman, in my opinion. So I think that this deck is excellent at really connecting you into your primal energy, your desires. Excellent for ancestor work. And I've been really enjoying working with this deck with the new Green Witch Oracle deck. So I've paired them, and I have been really enjoying working with the two of them together. And this deck has been excellent at clarifying my tarot spreads, my card a day, and it's excellent for also exploring the witch archetype. I feel like you're going to see a lot of that. As I've said before, I was extremely drawn to witches as a child. So it's not a surprise that it's here in my collection. So, especially as we're talking about inner child work, right? So this is another one. Another, I think, excellent deck for doing this type of work. I have the Tarot of Vampyres by Ian Daniels. This deck, it's very sensual. It really connects with the vampire myth. And I find that the vampire myth aligns itself very well to the Femme Fatale myth, for obvious reasons. The deck, it's very sensual, it's very primal, and it's very beautiful. It's got very unique gothic imagery, and the guidebook is it's considered one of the best here within our community. So I'm sure most of you have a copy of this deck already. So if you are interested in connecting with the Femme Fatale archetype and you haven't whipped this baby out, maybe consider it. Last, actually not last, I have two more. The Wild Unknown Tarot. As I've mentioned before, this is one of my favorite tarot decks. It has a really raw, powerful, wild voice and energy to it. I find some of the imagery to be very thought-provoking. It really brings a lot of feelings, emotions from the subconscious to the surface. It's excellent for shadow work for that purpose. And I think this deck could also be very beneficial for really connecting to the Femme Fatale archetype. A lot of my experience with this subject has been archetypal. Last but not least, I have the Witch's Tarot by Burning Paper Hearts. Just to give you a heads up, this deck has nudity, so you might want to skip ahead if that's insulting, or if that offends you. This deck, I think, can be very helpful for connecting with that archetype and for exploring the themes of self-empowerment as well. As well as just doing shadow work around self-empowerment. The imagery is very thought-provoking. I find this deck brings up a lot of emotion, you know, and not all of it is pleasant. So I think that this deck is very powerful. So this is the Witch's Tarot by Burning Paper Hearts. The creator is creating an oracle deck. I'm really excited to work with it. So I think that this is a good place to conclude the video. I'm finding that now that I have a daughter, it's becoming more important to really have these discussions and to do this type of work, at least in my personal path. And I'm happy to be here today sharing what I know and sharing what I love and what I found to be beneficial and helpful on this journey. I hope you liked my more archetypal approach to this type of work. Of course, you don't have to go that route. I just found it to be particularly helpful. It's been very beneficial. And of course, you don't need to embody or bring in the energy. You can just connect with the archetype through myth, research, and understanding. You could just journal about the cycles and the patterns that you experienced as a child, really taking a look at how the women express their personal power and how that connects to you in your present day life. That can be just as beneficial. So again, like I said, this is probably something that I'm going to unpack for the rest of my life. There's probably going to be updated videos as more information and experiences become available to me. So before we close out the video, I want to share with you some journal prompts or a tarot spread that I created that I thought could be beneficial and helpful for some of you on your journey. Feel free to use it however way that you want. I'm going to go ahead and put it on the screen as well as in the description box for you. So feel free to use it and let me know in the comment section below what you thought about this video. Do you find yourself drawn to the Femme Fatale archetype as you're going about your journey with your inner child work or your shadow work, or even if it's just your day-to-day life, your personal path? I want to know. Let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.